Welcome to the fifth quarter show here in the middle of week 14, almost 15. Once again, we have CincyIceBurg and BigHurt here, who are part of the OMFL and respective owners of the 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals. As we told you, we're going to bring you a show each about every 2 to 3 advances. Our last show took place in the middle of week 11, so we're following up here in week 14. Let's go ahead and dive into some important stuff here. We're going to change up the lineup here a little bit. And Cincy, why don't you go ahead and talk about our power rankings, or I should say your power rankings. Give us what you got.
All right, what's going on, fellas? We're going to start this off at number 10. It's going to be Maniac's Bucks. Right now, he's on a 3-game win streak. You know, he just came off that big win against Nate's New Orleans Saints to put him in a big spot for the playoffs. He's recently found his run game. He potentially could be scary going into the playoff hunt. At number 9, we got the 8-5 Minnesota Vikings. A couple games did get away from him recently, but you know, he's still got a strong offense. It's one of the top in OMFL, and let's see what happens down the road. At number 8, surprisingly, he hasn't been this low in a while, but I've got the Seahawks. You know, he had a tough battle a couple weeks ago against the 49ers. He's got them next week. You know, pretty much for the division. You know, he's really not blowing guys out or, you know, winning by a lot, but he's winning. That's the important part, and that's what you need in this. That's why he's at number 8. At number 7, we have the Houston Texans. You know, they recently got a couple of divisional losses versus Bill and Dwayne. You know, let's see if he can bounce back and find his finishing moments here in the regular season. And then rounding off the number 6 is going to be the Raiders. You know, he's just got Lynch back. He was finding ways to win without Marshawn. He's got one of the best defenses in the league. He's got 2 very important matchups coming up. He's got me in a couple weeks and the Broncos, which is his arch rival. So we'll see how he handles those 2 teams.
Yeah, so what I find really interesting here, as you kind of gave me your 6 through 10, we got a new team in here, the Bucks, like you said, very hot, finding ways to win games. Won a big game against the Saints here in week 14 that's already taken place in the middle of this week. And then, like I said, he found a way to win. It was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago against the 49ers, my team. Just running the ball, very efficient. Even struggled in the passing game, but found a way to win the game. So it's kind of interesting to see that the Bucks are in there. Very respectable team, but it's also very interesting to see that we have the Raiders, the Vikings, the Seahawks, and the Texans in this tier, just because these teams all were in the, you know, either top 2 or even top 5 for majority. And as the league is shaking up, we're kind of having that separation, but don't count any one of these teams out. Go ahead and talk about your 3 through 5.
All right, coming in at number 5 is going to be Atlanta. You know, they got back-to-back slip-ups versus the Cowboys and Nate. Nate actually having a big win going up against Atlanta. And, you know, his wins are going to depend on his defense, in my opinion. He's got a good offense, but his defense is number 1 in my books. And we'll see how that goes. Coming in at number 4 is going to be your San Francisco 49ers. You know, you got a big win over Mo. That was very impressive. A lot of people were watching that game. But a lot of people were watching that game against Maniac. That was his breakout game, I think, to prove that he belonged in the playoffs. We slipped you down to number 4 because, once again in that loss, you showed us 4 interceptions. The quarterback play could haunt you to being the number 1, number 2 in the league. We'll see what happens, see if you improve it. And then we got the Patriots. They've been silent but deadly. Haven't heard a lot from them, They're on a 10-game win streak right now, fellas. You better start watching out for the Patriots.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said we haven't heard a lot from the Patriots because, being on a 10-game winning streak, that they were 0-3 to start the season. Kind of switch owners here, bring in the new guy, and comes in, rattles off 10 wins in a row, and climbs the power rankings each and every week, and has got himself in place to win that AFC East and be, one of the teams to reckon with over there in the AFC. But it's funny is yesterday in the chat we had some flare up where the Patriots kind of made himself known, and it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out there. In the top 2 teams in the NFC on your power rankings last show have fallen out of the top 2 and down into the 3 through 5 tier. But I think the Falcons and the 49ers both show that it's any given Sunday. You can get beat by any team. You just have to show up and play your game. Otherwise, it's going to be a long road home, or has you looking on the outside in. So you just got to win every single game and find a way to win. Let's go ahead and take it to the top 2, 1 and 2.
All right, at number 2, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, they're sitting at 10-2. They have a game tonight. They're sitting number 2 in scoring and points allowed. So that's a good reason why they have that 10-2 record. As of late, they've been taking care of business. But the next 2 weeks, tonight's game and next week's game, they play the Chargers and the Raiders, which are no sleepovers, I guess you could call it. The Chargers coming in sluggish, but they look to regain height for the playoffs, and the Raiders are a well-known, team out of the West. Let's see if the Bengals can get through these next couple weeks and hold off this tough West. And then at number 1 is going to be Dwayne's Colts. He's number 1 in scoring, number 1 in defense. The guy can get pressure from anyone. It's led by Sheard at defensive end. He's got about 26 sacks, I believe. He's got a power run game with the rookie Bo Scarborough, who he made a nice trade with early in the season. He's just proven that he controls the game with his run game. He passes when he needs to. You just don't know what he's going to do, if he's going to pass or run. He's going to get his rushing in, but you don't know when he's going to pass. And that, my friends, is why he is number 1 in your OMFL midweek 14 power rankings.
It's funny that we've got these 2 teams at the top, because I think for efficiency, if you look at both of these teams, something that we covered in the last show, the 5th quarter show during week 11, we talked about quarterback play. We talked about percentage and completion passes, and as well as touchdown to interception ratios. And you and Dwayne both were at the top, respectively. And you guys are showing it in your records. Dwayne obviously shows that he can run the ball with a team that out of the box really isn't that great of an offensive line, and brings in a young power back and just is mauling defenses and making them look every which way possible. But it's funny that, at this time of the season, it's always one of my favorites to kind of get down to the nitty gritty last couple of weeks. And like you said, you got a couple of big matchups. So I'm kind of looking through the schedules here as we were doing this show and just seeing some key games. And, the Bengals stand out. Chargers, you got the Raiders, and they got Lynch back, and they're a tough team. Then you got the Browns, which is an in-division game, and I believe you close out the season with the Steelers. But then, like, we look over at the Colts. They just got done playing their tough game against the Texans. Found a way to get revenge there from the midseason loss that they had versus the Texans. And then to close out, they got the Cowboys next week. So it's just going to be interesting to see how things kind of shake up here as we close out the season. As you can see, we had quite a bit of movement here in the top 10 from last show into this show. So it'll be interesting to see how everything plays up with the playoffs. So let's go ahead and take us right into the playoff predictions. And I'm going to kind of let you start it off here. For the NFC, what you got? What is your prediction? 1 through 6 seeds. Kind of talk about a couple of bubble teams that could sneak in or that are in the picture right now, and maybe are bubble teams that are going to be on the end or at the end, looking in from the outside. Just kind of give us your rundown of what you got.
All right, so. My rankings are going to, it's going to factor in a big Week 15 matchup we got over there. We got your 49ers and Mo's Seahawks. But as of right now, all I can base it off of is what we have now to show and what you did the first time you played them. And I think you'll take them in the second game also. So therefore, I'm going to put you, the 49ers, as the 1 seed in the NFC. Because outside of that game, I really don't see you having a tough time. The second seed is going to be the Falcons. He's going to have a couple game lead over the third place, I believe, so he's going to secure that 2 seed. If you win out and he wins out. As a 3 seed, I got a little surprise. I got the Detroit Lions, a little, double no action. He's my surprise team that I think could scare a few people. He hasn't had the strongest offense in years, but he's always had a very good defense, and I think that's going to push him over the edge and take the North. And then I had the Eagles at the 4 seed. I didn't talk too well about him in our first show, but he must have been listening, and he heard us because he's been on a roll as of late. And I think his role is going to carry himself to a divisional title. And then for the wild cards, I got Seattle as the top seed. And as of right now, I got the Buccaneers because they got that big win over the Saints last week. And that's going to be my 6th in the playoffs. And I think my bubble teams are going to be still the Saints. They got a shot. They got to win out, definitely. The Giants, I'm going to say the East, you really just don't know who's going to come out on top. It's just whoever is hot at the end, I believe. Because the Giants are technically still winning, but you just don't know who's going to come out on top of that. So they're still in it. And then the Vikings are technically a game up in the North, but they've been fading. They got a couple losses in a row here, and they got to regroup quickly.
Well, it's kind of interesting. You mentioned a few teams. Definitely a shock there. But for my NFC predictions, I'm going to go ahead and put the Falcons as the 1 seed. I just think that they've got winnable games here for the last 3 weeks. The Week 17 matchup is going to be an interesting one with the Bucks because it will determine the Falcons, has secured a spot, obviously. Then how he plays in that game with Maniac. Obviously, that'll be an interesting matchup just because if he's secured a spot, the Falcons meaning, if the Falcons have secured the spot, then Maniac, that's an important game for the Bucks there. So it'll be interesting to see that. But I got the Falcons as the number 1 team in the NFC. And like you said, our Week 15 matchup, then the 49ers and the Seahawks, could go, either way. As you saw in the first game, came down to the last play of the game. It had my heart racing. That was a wild game. Definitely, for sure, an instant classic. But like you said, we got to go with what we got now. Going off of game one, I got the 2 seed with the 49ers. And then in the 3 seed, I do have the Vikings. Just they had a hotter start than the Lions. But looking at the schedules, I really think this could go either way. It's very interesting to see, like I said, as it comes down to the end of the year matchups. And one of the things that Nate talked about in Press Pass Live is these divisional matchups at the end of the year. Week 16, just like me and the Seahawks in Week 15, Week 16, you got the Vikings and the Lions. That could be literally the determination factor right there. Comes down to that game to see who wins the division. But going off the first game, the Vikings did win 20-7. So I do have the Vikings pulling a close one away, getting back on track, just because they did have a couple slip-up games, but they were against the Patriots, who are on a 10-game win streak, and the Seahawks, who are battling to stay alive in that division. So I think they bounce back, get a win against the Dolphins and the Bears in Week 17, and then Week 16, they beat the Lions for the division. So I do have the Vikings as my 3 seed. My 4 seed, it's a tough one. I literally could take a coin, flip it 10 times out of 10, and I think 5 times you're going to get the Eagles, 5 times you're going to get the Giants. It's just such a crapshoot on this, because the Giants are finding ways to win games and have been competitive all year long. But like you said, the last show that we hosted, we talked about the Eagles and how it was kind of a shock. They've got this powerhouse 93 overall rated team. How are they not winning games? And here they come down the stretch, winning 3 division games in a row, which are important games against the Giants, the Redskins, and the Cowboys the last 3 weeks. And they wrap up the season with the Rams, the Texans, and the Redskins. I think that, if the Eagles go 2-1 in that, that's a win for them. But, the Giants are, like I said, right in the thick of things. They haven't played the Week 14 game against the Redskins yet, so they still have 4 games left on the schedule. They got the Redskins this week, the Titans next week, then the Colts, and then the Cowboys. That's just looking at the schedule. Both teams are basically neck and neck at this point. They've split on the year, I believe it was. The Giants lost both games against the Eagles. So, just looking at the down the stretch, the Giants definitely have a tougher schedule, playing the number 1 team in the league in the Colts in Week 16. Week 15, you got the Titans, who are fighting for a playoff spot in the AFC. And then you got 2 division games against the Redskins and the Cowboys. So I'm going to have to give the nod to the Eagles at this point, just because they've beat the Giants both times in the regular season, and the Giants have a tougher schedule. So that would be my number 4 team. I got the Seahawks in the first wild card spot. Unless he obviously wins Week 15 against me, then we'd flip. And then the 6th seed, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting a couple big wins, like we've talked about, versus me a couple weeks ago. And then obviously getting the win against the Saints here. So that would wrap up my 1 through 6 seeds for the NFC. The NFC bubble teams that I have, like I said, the Giants, that could be easily in as the 4th seed, and then the Eagles would be there, but I have the Giants on the bubble, just being a tougher schedule and losing both games to the Eagles. I have the Saints losing that game to the Bucks, but I think if the Saints went out, they could still find a way and sneak in. And the Lions, I do have the Lions on the outside, just because I think that the Vikings will find a way to win. The last 2 games that kind of brought the division closer have been against the Patriots and the Seahawks. So I think that they find a way to win the last 3 games and lock up the division. So that wraps up the NFC. Let's take it over to the AFC. Cincy, what do you got? What do you got for the AFC?
All right, for the AFC. Of course, the Colts sitting at the top seed. They look pretty tough over there. At the 2 seed, we got myself as the Bengals, pending my next 2 weeks because I don't see the Patriots losing at all. So if I lose one of my next 2 games, I will be bumped down to potentially the 4 seed, depending on which game I lose, because this is going to be a tight 2-3-4. So right now I got myself at number 2, the Patriots at number 3, and the Raiders at number 4. Like I said, it's a tight one. I mean, the Patriots could be 2 if I lose. If the Raiders win, and they beat me, they could be 3 and I could be 4. It's going to be a crapshoot for, who comes out on top in the end. But for sure, I think the Colts will be the 1 seed. I like the Texans. They've shown some big wins. They've lost a couple. I won't say rough games, but they had one sim loss, and then a game against the Colts that they lost, but they also beat the Colts, so they're definitely showing their playoff team. My 6th seed is actually going to be Jacksonville. I think they, come out on top. I'm not the biggest fan of Jacksonville in the playoffs, but I like them in the regular season. He plays his game. Doesn't always, come out with the prettiest score, but he's beaten Tennessee both times this year, and he's got a little bit easier schedule than Tennessee, so I think he comes out on top. And then my bubble teams is going to be obviously Tennessee, but they have a tough schedule, and they have the 2 losses against Jacksonville against them. And then the Chargers, who out of nowhere have 5 losses. But, if they beat the Bengals this week, they can really turn it around and make a run for the playoffs.
Yeah, so the AFC's, we're going to have a lot of similarities here. I think the Colts, obviously, number 1 team, obviously, no shock there. I do have the Bengals as the number 2, but like you said, 2-3-4 is going to be interesting to see in the last couple of weeks here. Being that the Bengals play the Chargers, then the Raiders. So we've got a couple key matchups there in the next week 14, week 15 matchups for the Bengals, the Raiders, and the Chargers. But I've got the Bengals as a 2, being with how it's sitting right now. I've got the Patriots, obviously on a 10-game win streak. They're sitting at 3. 4 is going to be the Raiders. And then I do have the Texans in as the first wild card in the 5th seed. And then Jacksonville with their big win over Tennessee this week, 27-20, puts them in the driver's seat for the 6th seed in the second wild card spot. The Titans, still there, still in the thick of things. Just have to find a way to, and have some things happen and chips fall their way a little bit, but they could still get in. Lots of football left to be played here in the last 3 weeks. And then the Chargers, they kind of control their own fate a little bit, playing you this week. And then the last couple weeks, they play the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Broncos. All 3 teams that are kind of out of the playoff picture. So it's going to be interesting to see that if they can win tonight against the Bengals, that puts them back kind of in the picture a little bit, as they're still sitting on the edge there. So this is really their playoff game tonight. It's gonna be interesting. We got the matchups taking place. It's a home game for the Chargers. So no pressure on the Bengals or the Chargers there, but that'll be a fun one to watch. And then the last 3 weeks, I think the Chargers are definitely favorites in those games. So if they could win out, they are in the picture for the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out there. But I do have the Titans and the Chargers on the outside looking in as of now, because I don't see the Chargers beating the Bengals, I think it'll be a fun matchup to watch. Smash is a good opponent, but I think that air and out attack will be too much in the end from the Bengals and just putting up points. So we'll see what happens, but that is what I have for the AFC. Taking it to the next part of our show here, we've got the shocker surprise team of each conference. And the NFC we kind of had a tough time picking a team. We said it's going to be the NFC South with the playoff race, and then the Lions. The NFC South is just because I mean, I don't know how you feel, but sitting here over the last couple weeks and since our last show here about 3 weeks ago, the Falcons, that's all the talk it's been out of the NFC South is the Falcons, the Falcons, the Falcons. And the Bucks are charging forward right now, picking up on their running game, bringing in one of those strong rushing attacks, finding ways to win, getting some key wins, putting themselves right in the thick of things. The Saints are right there getting a big upset against the Falcons. So that whole division, and even Carolina's played some tough opponents very closely. Going back and looking at their schedule, I think that's a team that Colin is going to find a way and kind of find his niche going into the next Madden season for OMFL. But yeah, I mean, he's ran into just in the last 4 weeks, he's played the Lions, the Seahawks, the Bucks, and the Browns. 3 of those teams are teams we just got done talking about. So, I mean, it's like he's had a tough road, but he's been respectively 6-12, 16-13, 18-3, 20-21. So really only one game was out of a 1-score deficit. So it's just kind of interesting to see, like, that whole division is competitive. It'll be interesting to see, like I said, how it shakes up. I think the NFC South is definitely interesting to watch here as we go into the end of the season. And then the Lions. The Lions have just flown under the radar, have done everything that they needed to do to stay in the picture. Beating the teams that they should have beaten. Had a couple tough games in week 12 and 13 against the Bears and the Rams that I think that they could have won. But it all comes down to week 16 versus the Vikings. So that'll be an interesting matchup and just kind of an interesting team because we really haven't talked about the Lions much. It's been all Vikings for the NFC North and Priest. If Priest can get his passing game attacked with the Packers and the Rodgers, and that's just kind of been a shock there. But here's the Lions, sliding themselves right into the picture and seeing how that's going to shake up. What do you got to say about that?
In my opinion, this NFC South is, like you said, they're all competitive. In my opinion, I think next season that's going to be the best top to bottom division in the league. Colin's going to find his way, and the other 3 are going to continue to find success. I really enjoy that people. I'm going to take a step back here. I like that people watch this show because, speaking of the Saints, he took it hard that I, sold his team last show, and he got a huge win. I think that fueled him over the Falcons, and that's just something I like to see here. But yeah, I think it's going to be a barn burner for the finish here. The Bucks have the edge in the playoff hunt for the wild card. And the Saints are, not going to get off the gas pedal. And, next season, I don't think it's going to be all Falcons talk. I think you might even see, 2 10-win teams in that division. And then let's go over to the Lions here, Double no. I love talking about you, bud. You don't think highly of yourself in this league, and, I noticed that. But you got a real nasty defense. And let's not forget you got the Lions. They're not Not one of the better teams to use. If you only found an offense, which we've been saying that for years, but I think you might find something here. You're only a couple pieces away, bud, but I think you can make a run and surprise quite a few people.
It's funny that you mentioned, taking a step back and how you sold the Saints, and then Nate kind of made a comment about that, and then here he pulls off a huge upset win, or a big win, against the Falcons. I wouldn't say it's a huge upset, because I think Nate and the Falcons guy, talent wise, or uh, competitiveness wise, are pretty level. But obviously the Falcons were the top dog when we did our last show. And then Nate pulls out that win, and it's like, yep, here he comes, here he comes. So, but let's not forget, the Eagles. We called out the Eagles, and then they rattle off some big wins. So yeah, like you said, it's interesting to see the teams that we talk about, and kind of keep an eye on them. There's so many teams that we could spend 30 minutes on each team, literally. But it's just kind of picking out the key ones. So if any of you guys are listening that we haven't talked about you, that gives you the fuel and the fire. Give us something to talk about. We will talk about you guys on this show. We love picking out some big things to talk about. But what we've talked about is just the things that kind of stand out to us in the league. And it, you know, I can't thank the board and Nate enough of the time that they've put in to adjust the sliders and find the way to make this league what it is. So I think part of what's Nate's struggles early on when Madden first releases is he's putting so much time in and trying to find the settings and the sliders and stuff that we need. And it's kind of, he's on overload where he doesn't have time to kind of have a break from the game. And I think having a break is just as important as getting your practice and your stick time in. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how season 2 and 3 on Madden 19 plays out. Like you said, I think the NFC South is going to be a division to watch, top to bottom. A lot of talent, a lot of potential. It'll be a fun one to watch. Let's pop over to the AFC. The AFC surprise team, and let's just say these surprise teams it's not always a surprise, in a bad way. It's just a surprise, like, where did that come from? And our AFC team that we're going to talk about here is none other than the team that's won 10 games in a row. That is correct, 10 games in a row, and that is the New England Patriots. What do you have to say about them Patriots from New England?
Well, this no competition guy looks like he's got no competition. He comes in the league. He in his second game he plays the Colts, Dwayne, and he takes them out. 20-10. He shuts down that offense, and he puts up 20 points. That's nuts. We should have been talking about this guy right when he came in the league, but we weren't. He's slipping under the radar. But like you said earlier, he did speak up in the chat, and he's talking about crowning himself. I didn't want to get too ahead of myself, so I didn't speak out too much when I seen that, just a little bit. So the last few weeks here, he's taking on the Jets. Week 12, he pumped them by almost 30. Then he took on the Vikings and pumped him by almost 30. He is annihilating guys. And then we almost had Kevin. Kevin, we talked about you, buddy. You almost got your second win. You should have got your second win. It was a close battle. The Patriots almost slipped up, but they took care of business. This team is playing well. They're a top 5 offense and a top, 7-8 defense. They're being led right now by Rob Gronkowski. That tight end is surprisingly healthy. He hasn't been hurt all year. I'm not knocking on anything because he's probably got, 65 injury rating. You know, I'm in the AFC. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. Oh well. Uh, and then he's got, led by running back, the rookie, Sony
Michelle.
Michelle from Georgia.
Yep.
You know, we don't like Georgia. There ain't no Bulldog fans in OMFL. And then he's got Brady working his magic. You know, he's a little high on the interceptions, which is something to look at, down the stretch. But his running game is very strong, and that's the concrete of winning teams usually. He's got a strong defense over there. He's got multiple interceptions from multiple guys. I mean, the McCourty brothers are having great seasons. Jason's got 9 interceptions, and he's just having an unreal season. But, looking at the rest of the schedule, he's really got no one left, that's, I'm going to say tough. That might be a tough word to use, but we're going to say that. And, I think he has a sweep and only has 3 losses on the year, and they weren't even hit. So I think he's going to go, undefeated in his own little season.
Yeah, it's like I said, we kind of touched base on this in the power rankings, but he's rattled off 10 wins in a row. 10 wins in a season is, we can all say that we've had good stretches and good runs, but winning 10 games in a row, you're showing up every week, you're doing your job, you're not overlooking any opponents, and like you said, he's winning some games by 30 points. He's doing what it takes to be talked about, thrown into the picture of an elite team. And while you were talking about Rob Gronkowski, I did take the second to go look at the injury ratings. Rob Gronkowski shockingly has a 77 injury rating, but here's the surprising thing. It's tied for worst on the game in Madden. 77 is the worst injury rating, tied with Reuben Foster from the 49ers. That is the worst injury rating. So, it is kind of a shock to see that Gronkowski has held up as well as he has with the amount of production and targets and field time he's had. But, we've always said if Gronkowski can stay healthy, that team can compete with anybody. They got one of the greatest of all time, the GOAT, Tom Brady, throwing the ball. And the Patriots always find a way to be in the picture. So no surprise there, but it is something that we definitely need to watch. He's definitely put himself on notice, bringing it up that he has called himself the AFC East champion going forward for each season. So to be interesting, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets, if you're listening, the Patriots have already crowned themselves the AFC East division champ each season here in the OMFL. Let's see if you guys can do something about that and kind of create a division rivalry over there. Kevin, you played tough this week. I watched a little bit of that game and thought you had a pretty good game played up until the end, but you just got to find ways to win those games to be competitive and be in the playoffs. If you do that, I think, like previous Madden, in Madden 18, you could find yourself in the AFC playoff picture, and even at the end in the AFC Championship or even the OMFL Super Bowl. So, don't get discouraged. Keep fighting, keep competing, and see what happens. But the Patriots definitely come in as a surprise shock team right now, rattling 10 games off with a new owner. But he is not going to be unknown going forward. That's for sure. So next little part we're going to get into is just some general league talk. Cynthia, I know you wanted to bring up a topic in this, so let's hear what you have.
All right. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm just going to go over it real quickly. Not a lot I've seen it, but I have seen it enough to where it's, needs to be brought up. Just to remember, everyone, the rules is not 4 verticals. It's vertical concepts in the final 2 minutes of each half. You probably understand the final 2 minutes of each half. You all can read a clock. But I've seen some 4 vertical plays, but I've just, and I've seen vertical concepts. Now, 4 verts, obviously that's the most commonly known, but I've seen, a few guys run tight end attack, go Y shakes out of the shotgun. Those are vertical concepts. I just remember what the rules are. I just want to touch up on that. It's vertical concepts, not 4 verts. So that's all.
So with that being said, let's just touch base and make it easy for some of those who are unsure what a vertical concept is. If they're listening into the show, just a quick, 1-2 sentence, the vertical concept, what is it?
Basically, it's when you got at least 3 guys going on a fly route. And also, we look at hot routes too. If you got 2 guys going on a fly, and then you hot route one guy and put him on one, that counts as a vertical. You just got to look back and pay attention to the play. But try, to keep it limited to 2, it's pretty fair rule, pretty easy to follow.
Yeah, so 3 or more routes, basically going, deep in other sense, is going to be a vertical concept. But yeah, those are touch based on Nate and the board, kind of policed by them. So yeah, as playoffs kind of wind down, we'll see what happens. I know that since you got a little bit more time to spend watching games than I do with my work schedule, but I do watch some games and I have noticed it as well. But I've kind of left that to Nate and his team to monitor that. But yeah, just keep that in mind, fellas, just what we got going on. Other thing I would like to mention here is teams not in the playoff picture. If you are not in the playoff or the bubble, that does not mean your remaining games are not important. Make sure that you show up and schedule your games each and every week, playing a spoiler for those who are in the playoff picture. Nothing more important and nothing better than being part of a league that has people who are eliminated from the playoffs but still playing their games and being spoilers for those who are in the playoffs, because those bubble teams, like we talked about, the Chargers and the Titans and the Giants / Eagles, Saints, Lions / Vikings, the Saints, the Jags, all those teams are kind of on the bubble. The Bucks, some are in the picture of being a playoff team and some are out of the picture, but all that could change in one key game. So, if you're no wins or 5 wins or whatever and you're not in the playoffs, make sure that you still play that game and going for a win, because you could literally change the picture for a member in our league, and nothing better than having that competition. That's what kind of makes the OMFL better than any other league. So make sure that you keep doing that, and then make sure that you're getting ready for the playoffs for those teams, as well as doing your scouting and kind of preparing for the off season, deciding what contracts, who we're going to keep, and also, I know Nate probably will discuss this in his Press Pass Live in the offseason, but make sure that you guys are touching up on the contract rules and kind of keeping an eye on those things, just so it's not as much work for the OMFL board. They've got enough things on their hands with everything. Help those guys out. So just a friendly reminder, touch up on the rules, the contract negotiations there, and it's under the forums on the OMFL. Let's take us into this next segment here, or the next portion of things. As we discussed in our last show, we've got key stats and injuries, and a couple things I'm just going to mention since you jump in and talk about each one that you want to talk about. But we talked about the Bucks. The Bucks being a playoff team, kind of making a run here in the last couple weeks. And one guy that's kind of stood out, that's made some noise, is the rookie running back from USC, Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones has surpassed the 1,000-yard mark, has 9 tutties on the season. And yes, I said tutties for touchdowns. But yes, 9 touchdowns or tutties. And he has a 5.3 yards per carry average. That is pretty solid for a rookie running back, and to kind of put the team on his shoulder, and carry that team into the playoff picture and getting a couple key wins. One other player that we talked about in the last show was DJ Moore. He's still leading the league in receiving yards, or in receptions, at 91 receptions. And Julio Jones is in second, closest to him. DJ Moore has almost 1,500 yards receiving with 8 tutties on the season. That's a pretty outstanding mark for a rookie wide receiver. So, yeah, the Panthers are definitely finding a way to make DJ Moore a threat. And then something that you discussed earlier, Cincy, when talking about Dwayne with the Colts. Jabal Sheard has 25 and a half sacks on the season. 25 and a half, and we still have 3 weeks left to play. This guy could reach 30 sacks on the season. That is something to definitely key on. Throw an extra tight end or do whatever you got to do to slow him down, because he's definitely finding a way to get after your quarterback. And then the last thing, field goals are still making a difference in some of these games, coming down to, last field goals. Field goal percentages are not quite as high as they've been in previous Maddens, which we discussed in our last fifth quarter show, which was good to have. Only one kicker still has 100%, and I believe that is Suck Up from the Titans. So kudos to you there, Bill. But yeah, only one kicker with 100% field goal kick rate, or field goal percentage rate. And that is something crazy to think about, that a field goal can come, make a difference in a game, especially down the stretch here, getting into the playoffs or even into the playoffs, as we get into some of these tight games that make a difference. We have 6 kickers with over 60-yard field goals. So yeah, people are not only missing them, but they're launching them from midfield essentially, and nailing some of these crazy field goals. But yeah, what do you got? What you got? Anything to throw in there on those stats there, Cincy?
Not any additional ones, but I'll touch up on them. Yeah. So Ronald Jones, he's been quite impressive. He started off a little slow. Maniac, was having trouble time finding the running game, but he certainly has found it with that young rookie. And that fella only has 1 fumble all season from all those carries, which I find very impressive. And then DJ Moore, the rookie, he's been leading the league all season. Even though Colin can't, click his whole team, he's clicked with DJ Moore, that's for sure. And to me, he's the front runner for the rookie of the year. And I just don't see many better rookies than him right now. And then Sheard, I know all about him. That guy destroyed me when when I went up against him. But he's been continuing on all season. Last 3 weeks, I mean, he's got 2 sacks, 4 sacks, 3 sacks. He's a multi-sack per game player. I mean, like you said, throw a tight end on him, throw any extra blocker, throw the water boy at him, throw something, slow that man down. He is insane. And then, one of my favorite stats, the field goals. I love it. We shouldn't all have, great field goal percentages like we usually do in Madden, where you got 2 guys under 90%. But it's important to keep them short, because when you miss that meter by just a little bit on those 50-yarders, it really does matter. And it's key when you got, when it's, let's say, 3rd and 12, and you're sitting in range for about a 54-yarder. Don't go for the first down. Just get yardage. Even if you don't get it, that's points. Get a closer field goal. Just think about the end result in the game, because those 3 points could matter in the end.
That's definitely something to think about. You said front runner of the rookie of the year. I think there's two guys that are basically one in the NFC, one in the AFC. You can't forget about Bo Scarborough and what he's done as a rookie from Alabama. He's got 1,100 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, 17 rushing touchdowns, and racking up like 85.5 yards per game on the ground with 202 carries. And even better than Ronald Jones, doesn't have a fumble on the season. That's just crazy to think about. But yeah, definitely some rookies up there putting up some good numbers. Bo Scarborough, Ronald Jones, and then DJ Moore. It's Michael Gallup is up there for the Cowboys, wide receiver, but not quite where DJ Moore is. But yeah, it's interesting to see, and thinking about that going forward. Just think, going into the offseason, anybody could pick up a rookie and do these things. It could completely change the way your team is playing. So it'll be interesting to see how the offseason and the draft, always a fun time to see who picks up the new guy or the new player that kind of makes a difference for his team. So the second part of this is key injuries. We've got some different injuries that are settling in from the last show that we did on the fifth quarter show in week 11. But one of the key injuries that I'm going to talk about is Dante Pettis. Dante Pettis was a receiver for the 49ers, traded over for A.J. Green in a deal there, and he is out for 4 weeks with a dislocated ankle. It'll be interesting to see how the Bengals still use that passing attack without Dante Pettis. They still have playmakers every which way you look, but it'll just be interesting to see if it's a different style or how that shakes up. And then Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs. He's out for 5 weeks, broken collarbone. It'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs kind of finish up the season. Being that they could be a spoiler, Shocks fan definitely knows how to play and be a very competitive player. And like we talked about, you could be a spoiler and you have some key games coming up versus the Ravens, the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Raiders. So your last 3 weeks are versus teams that are in the playoff discussion. So it'll be interesting to see how he's affected without Mahomes, if he can still find a way to put some yards up and give some of those teams problems and find a way to win and be a spoiler. Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Washington, 2 running backs for the Lions. The Lions are going to be without those guys. And as we talked, that Detroit is in the picture to win the NFC North if they can win that game against the Vikings coming up. They still have, I believe, LeGarrette Blount and Theo Riddick. So they still have a couple of backs that they can turn to. But Kerryon Johnson, the rookie, and then DeAndre Washington, kind of some speed backs. It's kind of shifting the offense to see, does he still try and pound the ball with Blunt, or does he turn more towards the passing game? Like you said, Double Null is trying to find that offensive rhythm, and this injury definitely puts a kink in that offense there. And then the last key injury that I have is Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr, linebacker for the Vikings, is out 2 weeks with a shoulder tear. The Vikings are literally in the mix, as we talked about, for the playoffs, and he is such a weapon on the defensive side of things because he can match up against pretty much any running back or any tight end with his athletic ability on Madden. He just can run running backs down. He can cover them. He's big. He's fast. So it'll be interesting to see if that defense is hurting, or if they can still find a way to make some plays. Being that he's out for 2 more weeks, I think he's out through the Lions game, if I'm correct. But if he is out for the Lions game, that could make a big difference. Or if he gets him back for the Lions game, that could be a big difference there as well. So those are kind of the 4 injuries that I had that stood out for me. Cincy, do you have anything on that?
Yep. So, unfortunately, one of my own is on this list that I don't want it to be. Dante Pettis, he was my leading guy, but he went down a couple weeks ago, and he's got 4 weeks left. I've been asking Gio and Mixon to carry a bit more per game, but I got John Ross stepping up, and Boyd and Eifert and Malone. So we'll see what happens there. But my offense has changed a bit. With Pettis being out, everyone's offense changes when their number one guy goes down. So we'll see, because that's a big injury for my next 2 games. Patty Mahomes. All right, Shocks. One of those 3 games, I think you can surprise OMFL. Not saying, it's a surprise, but you're without your key quarterback. I mean, you got Chad Henne as your quarterback. The guy is, I don't know, trash. We'll just call him trash. So, I still got faith in you. You can pull off one of those wins versus one of those big 3 that you got: the Chargers, the Seahawks, the Raiders. You're going to find a way to win one of those, I think. Then, Double Noise, you got 2 of your guys down. Washington went down as of recently. He's out 3 weeks. But your rookie, Kerryon Johnson, he's out 26 more weeks. He tore that pec on that photo shoot on the swimming model, swimsuit edition. You'll have him back next year, basically. He'll be at OTAs. He'll do it all for you. But you got 7 guys you're throwing to. I mean, I think if you just start passing, you'll be good to go. I mean, you got Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Anthony Thomas, Kenny Galladay, Michael Roberts. You got plenty of guys to be going to. I think you got a lot of options there. And then, you got LeGarrette, Smoke Me a Blunt. He's going to pound the end zone. Theoretic, great hands out of the backfield. You got a great offense still. As long as Matty Stafford stays healthy, because he's got a low injury rating also. I'm surprised he hasn't been injured. You got Tanner Lee sitting behind him, waiting in the wings. Then Anthony Barr, the Vikings linebacker. One of my favorite user linebackers to use. I mean, the guy's just unreal. He, like you said, he's all over the field. He can do it all. And I look forward to that matchup when they play each other to see if Barr plays, because I think that's a big factor in the game, like you said. And, hopefully nobody else gets injured on the year, but you can't predict injuries.
I mean, it might even be something where if he's not fully back, that it gives the Vikings Duvall Hornet, I believe is his name. But if it gives him the option to play through the injury, he's gonna have to look at those options and see what's his best option, or how risky is that? Because if he does win that game, then he kind of puts him in the playoffs. And let's say Barr gets hurt in that game, now he's without Barr going forward into the playoffs. So he's gonna have to weigh his options. But if he feels like his defense needs Anthony Barr, he might choose to play Barr through that injury in that game. So that'll be an interesting move. And then there's one thing that I did forget to put on here for key injuries. The Raiders. The Raiders got Marshawn Lynch back. That was one of our big topics on the last show. They got their meat and potatoes back. The guy that's going to grind out some yards for them and get those short down and just kind of the workhorse. He's got him back in the lineup fully healthy. So as the Raiders kind of go down the stretch in their final 3 games, they do have their guy in the backfield once again. All right, Cincy. Well, that is all I have for today's show. Do you have anything that you wanted to add into the show and kind of close it up?
I just wanted to say, great job, everyone, on, getting games in on Season 1. We've done pretty good on advances. I think, Season 1 went by pretty quickly. And just remember to post your games or post your game times as quickly as possible. I mean, Bill does an excellent job of letting everybody know when the last game is approaching, to schedule early. We should never have, guys be more than 24 hours without posting. That shouldn't happen, which it doesn't happen a lot, but, guys get close to that time. And, we appreciate Bill keeping up with everybody's schedule and posting it. And when you post on there, somebody brought it up one time. I believe it was Smash. It was a very good, checkup. Please send it to your opponent with the link. Get these games scheduled. Everybody's doing a great job, and we look forward to the playoffs.
Yeah, trying to touch up on that. Keep scheduling your games. Like I said, if you're playing a spoiler, take that game serious, because that could definitely change the direction for a playoff team, and that's what makes the leagues fun. So don't relax and just give up, throw the towel in. Make sure you play your games, schedule them just like you were in the playoffs, and get those games in. Play the spoiler. And then we appreciate everything the OMFL board, from Nate all the way down and his team, to Dawson and Dwayne, and who else we have? Smash, and am I leaving somebody out? Maniac.
Maniac.
And we even got Bill, who does the schedules. I know you guys put a lot of time in and make this league what it is. I know myself, I have a lot of fun and enjoy it, so we appreciate it. We appreciate everybody who's listening in. Don't forget to listen in to the Press Pass Live, each release of that, as well as the Tony Bono Show. The Tony Bono Show is a fun show to listen to, so make sure you tune into those when you get a chance, and kind of just covers all aspects of the league, different angles, different opinions, on the Tony Bono Show and the Fifth Quarter Show, and then the Press Pass Live with Nate and his boys, kind of doing touch up and some league talk and everything that they want to touch base on. But once again, we will be back in action probably over the playoff time, so we look forward to that. Finish up those games, get those in. Good luck to those teams who are in the playoffs, and those teams that are on the bubbles. Keep competing, keep fighting. Teams that are out of the playoffs, be the spoiler, be the shock team. Give us something to talk about on the next show, and we look forward to it. Until then, good luck all. Have a good one, and enjoy the rest of your day.